As you heard, my name is Michael McGuire. I'm a lecturer with Glasgow, Caledonian University in Scotland, and I teach digital construction to multiple cohorts, multiple programs. I thought I would start just briefly with my introduction to construction, which was a long time ago. In 1990, I left school and I was an apprentice structural fabricator. So my initial introduction to construction was fabricating steel frame buildings. And initially as an apprentice, my own trainers used competition a lot to engage us and allow us or promote us to develop. In 2001, I started part-time lecturing and teaching in a local vocational college, and it was mechanical engineering and architectural technology. And something that I noticed straight away was the disengagement from students, the lack of engagement. So I reflected back in this to say that I saw competition as maybe a really good way to engage students, but I had a really hard time convincing other educators of this who only responded with anxiety, other negative psychological effects, let's say. So from 2008 until 2017, I piloted this locally in my own institution and got tremendous results. We heard in the last presentation about a lack of digital skills or a lack of skills, practical application. We had 100% employment. We had companies hammering on the door asking to recruit our students. Such was the engagement and the turnaround. So we had a question then, and you see the study was 2018 until 2024. What we tried to then do was take that to a wider community and see whether this could be scaled up. Was this a unique instance in one program in one little institution, or could this work across multiple institutions? I tried the highest score. Everybody probably realise what happens. Everybody disengages because only one person can win. Okay, so one student wins, everyone else disengages. Measured improvement, I didn't really put much thought into it at the time, but when students found out that they were going to be measured on their improvement, they underperformed deliberately the first time. So, fastest to finish, chaos, absolute chaos. I have 25 students rushing to my desk with drawings to be the first to place the drawing on the desk. The negatives here are that all of these were promoting the simplest pass. Not quality of work, but the fastest to finish. So we started to look at things like student versus lecturer, student versus the professionals. I've been teaching for a long time, as you heard. This was meant to be deleted, but it's in. We have up here students versus professionals. This is a student who's just won a final and getting an Autodesk bag. Nobody looked stressed, right? Nobody felt the pressure. And a lot of the incentives were actually just little chocolate bars, as you see here. This chocolate bar in the UK has quite a cult status as well. So this was where we decided to take it. In terms of the last class I was in told me I should really just have the one research question, but I felt the second was actually equally important. Does competition-based learning increase engagement? And if it increases engagement, does it ultimately accelerate learning? And does it necessarily bring with it negative consequences? Is it the competition itself that brings the negative or anxiety, if you like, or is it how it's handled? So the group was put together through convenient sampling. I use LinkedIn a lot, and I had no problem finding 15 innovative educators across the UK who were desperate to take part. They had their own skills gaps. They knew they needed to teach digital construction. The students needed to pick up the skills. How else will we try this? So we had architectural technology, students civil engineering, construction project management, environmental engineering, quantitative surveying, and it actually grew to more as well. So 122 students took part in this over the 4 years. The methodology, any educators in the room will be familiar with reflection, and we looked at Lewin's action research cycle. This is our envision of this, that each new cycle was built on the findings of the last. So every new cycle that we found any issues, we resolved it in the last, and it's pretty standard for what an educator might be expected to do each year, let's say, as we kind of devise and work on our own curriculum. And this meant a lot to me. I've got 3 kids. My middle child was in the national gymnastics team. Gymnastics is a huge amount of pressure. But what I learned about was this Dallos model of mentoring relationships. We have low support and we have high support, and on the left we have low challenge and high challenge. And if you give somebody low support and low challenge, you have stasis, nobody grows. If you can increase the support, but you don't increase the challenge, then you have something called confirmation. And again, educators are familiar with this. You teach a new tool, and you allow the student to use the new tool again and again and again and again, and they confirm their knowledge. So that's the high support. If you can match high support with high challenge, you get growth. So people pushing themselves, accelerating their learning, learning new tools, learning things I didn't even know existed. Students taught themselves new tools to beat me in the class because it meant a lot to them to beat me. If you don't support it, yep, absolutely. You have that spiral, you have that negative anxiety, huge amounts of stress and retreat. We gave the option that students could withdraw from this at any time. They didn't need to compete. In 2018, this was my marking scheme. Every student, I had 25 students, every student that submitted a Revit model, I had already created the Revit model, so I knew what all the answers should be, the room area, the room volume, the length of walls, and I marked it against this. The problem is it's almost 400 rows long. So this took hours for me to mark a student's work. And me and the other educators would pull together and spend a Wednesday evening just marking student models. So this is not scalable, right? As we kind of work down through it. So what about to give the support? If we're going to up the challenge, let's up the support. And in the virtual learning environment, we used Moodle at the time, and now it's Blackboard. These are all of the short videos that the students got to watch. So the first 3, for example, were all at the same level using the same tools. 3 minutes to 5 minutes long maximum. After they completed them, they could then set a little assignment in the virtual learning environment. If they passed it, they got not a chocolate bar, but a digital badge. Oddly enough, they liked them better. These were a huge hit. Everybody was putting these on LinkedIn and all their social media, but they also got a score. And something that we didn't anticipate was, now you've passed, move to the next lesson. Nope. That's good. Move to the next lesson. Nope, students didn't. They wanted to beat their score, or they wanted to beat their friend, or they would ask me, what was your score? So this is where we kind of developed that to boost the support. This is what the students saw. So it started off with this little Revit house. I think everybody probably does the same thing. We all teach a little Revit model, nice and simple, get the confirmation of the tools, walls, windows, doors, floors, ceilings, whatever. But I moved the marking to an automated script. My initial plan with the automated script was for summative assignment, was purely for us, the lecturers, so that we could scale it up to 300-400 students, and we could actually mark it in time, let's say. But we very quickly realised we could also open that up to formative assessment. So now when the students work through the 3 videos or 4 videos, they got to mark their own work and they got immediate feedback. What you see along the bottom is a student who failed initially with something like 36% at their first attempt at a formative assignment, but they passed the next time with 58%, but they didn't just move on to the next assignment, they kept going. And I've only put up 3 here, but they ultimately ended up with 26 out of 26 because their friend had 25. And if I just show you here, this is in 2018, the little model that they made. This was the class scores. Task A was make the structural model. Task B was make the Revit architectural model. Task C was put information into the model, uniclass information, etc., extract it, put that in the form of COBE onto the ACC, and then clash detection and issues. And if you look at the number of columns, there were 2 hours for that and 8 hours for this little model here. Where that's gone, this is today. This is what a student is making. So we've got 46 columns, 369 beams. It takes them 4 hours to make that, including the architecture is 12 hours plus all the information going into it. And if we look at their scores are much, much closer together. So everybody's making much bigger models, but everybody's also scoring much, much better as well, much closer. And if you look at it, it's actually the lower performers that came up. It's not the top performers who dragged away. And then just to kind of finish off, to give it a bit of meaning, we asked a whole bunch of questions on to the educators and the students about whether it accelerated it, the softer skills as well. So what about their knowledge? Did it make it more interesting, critical thinking, problem solving, and so on? Did it have a negative impact or a positive impact? And this was what the educators said. Highly positive, extremely positive. A couple of people said not at all, which is fine. That was their interpretation of it. That's what they found. And the students said that. So the one at the top that looks extremely negative is actually obviously flipped because we're asking how negative was it, and the majority of the students said it wasn't negative at all, which when you read their comments, I love to hear things like this, but this was the best thing I did in 4 years of university. That's sad, but it's good. I love this way of learning, and it's not rocket science, but everybody starts to pick up on the third bullet point. I learned quicker because I practiced more. Competition just gave them the catalyst to practice more. This was it. And then, just to finish it off, the only people who said anything negative were students who took part extracurricular studies not embedded in their full-time module. So they did this over and above everything that they were doing on every other day. And then, just as a shameless plug, I'm just wondering if anybody else would like to take part. We are currently now rolling this out right now. There are 7 countries in Europe taking part in this study now: France, Italy, Poland, Austria, Germany, Ireland, and the UK. And globally, Brazil, Colombia, Canada, Jamaica, India, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, UAE, and I forgot to add in here, Australia. Well, so if anybody would like to meet up, I have loads of business cards. Thank you.